Nice.
Welcome to another broadcast of Two Guys Who Dive with Rob Wade and Robert Garza. The show is broadcast every Saturday at 8 o'clock. This particular broadcast, Saturday, February 4th, 2012. Episode 3, You Don't Know Where That's Been. And here we are. Well, welcome back.
Well, hello. How's it going?
It's good. It's good. Well, have you had a busy week this week or nothing eventful?
Actually, I've been kind of busy.
Oh, really?
Yeah, kind of busy at work.
Ah.
There's been a lot of stuff going on, just... I have to honestly say, I think there's something in the water here.
You're not pregnant, are you?
No.
Okay, just you know how that goes.
Not that I'm aware of. Although, I have been feeling a little heavier.
Don't even start. That's just sad. Okay. It's water weight. That's really it is. Water retention.
Yep.
Awesome.
No, just kind of odd things going on at work. As you know, I'm a police officer for the school district.
Right,
and,
right.
I can honestly say there's something in the water. Just
going crazy.
tripping these kids out.
Well, my week has been pretty interesting too. We've had some interesting issues, some challenges. I'm in a new job doing sort of some old stuff, but kind of in a new capacity. And of course, no sooner do I get in this new job than we have some issues externally created that created a challenge. But luckily, everybody I work with, stepped up, and we're making miracles happen every day. I like to say, saving the world one computer at a time.
There you go.
Okay, well, for those of you who saw last week's episode and commented on it, we thank you for your comments. And one of the things that was brought up that I think we'll need to bring to bear for from here on out is
future episodes.
Yeah, future episodes, current episode, and future episodes is making sure that as we talk about some of the aspects of diving, that we kind of make it conversant or conversational with a lot of our potential audience here, because not everybody dives, and in some cases it may be that even some of the newer divers are not quite as familiar with some of the aspects we're talking about, especially since we do a lot more advanced diving than most of your average divers out there. So we'll do our best to communicate things in a way that makes a little bit more sense, because sometimes it can get overwhelming, and it's like, wait a minute, I can't rewind in a live show and say, what did you say there? Although we do have our chat room going, so if you go to Ustream and just search for Two Guys Who Dive, you'll see our channel there. And as we do the show, we have the chat room going, so if you have any questions, comments, or anything, by all means, jump in the chat room. We'll be happy to address those. We can. That's the beauty of live shows. Now, obviously, it doesn't help you at all if you're watching a podcast. You're stuck with what you got.
Right.
So we're starting to put together show notes as we prepare for these shows, and still trying to build some predictable topics to go on, as well as just generally what we kind of come to the table with. And a couple of things that we want to make sure we start including in the episodes is some sort of a safety segment, either sharing some new information that we find out about in the industry, or maybe even sharing some real-world stories of situations where either proper preparedness and safety saved the day or could have saved the day had they been applied. And also possibly a new dive tech segment. Just kind of sharing some new things coming out that we've either seen or read about in the industry. Just to share with you all, especially newer divers, you might be interested in the cool toys that are out there. I know initially it's overwhelming to first get your certification. You're just like, okay, I guess get my basic gear, and you're just happy to have that.
Right.
But eventually you're going to get used to the stuff that you have, and you want to see what other people are using. You want to see the new toys, and as you know, and I know both, that because diving is becoming more and more mainstream, and easier to get into as a sport, the gear, the toys, the accessories, just
crazy. iPods underwater.
I know the H2Yo. It's just crazy stuff they come up with.
I don't know about. It would be nice to listen to music underwater, but I think I would get distracted and forget to look at my gauge.
Exactly.
And look at my depth.
Which of course can spell death if you don't pay attention to that stuff. We teach in the classes. Look at your console, look at your gear frequently,
Right.
and make sure you understand what it's telling you. But never dive beyond what your gear is telling you. Of course, if you're not paying attention to your gear and you're listening to the latest favorite music on your underwater submersible MP3 player, we may not be seeing you diving too much longer.
Yeah, I had a friend ask me, hey, how deep can you go? All the way if I'm not careful.
That's so true.
All the way to the bottom, you're not careful.
Yeah, exactly. And then somebody will be going after you with a winch or something to pull you up out of the water.
Yep.
Or they may just mark a grave for you.
That's it.
But that's true. Never dive beyond what your experience and training will take you to. So last week we kind of started building some ideas for this week's episode, and one of the things that we kind of mentioned we would talk about was having you share real-world experience on handling problems while diving. So I'll let you take it from there.
Real situations.
Yeah.
Gee, I don't know where to start.
Gee, how about that night dive?
The night dive. Oh, okay. I mentioned last week that during a night dive that Robert and I were having, I experienced some complications. One of the things was I got fatigued going out to a dive. We were doing a shore dive, and the swim out was pretty long, and the water temperature was a little cooler than usual. I had a 5 mil full suit on with hoodie, gloves, the works, because the water was cold. On the way out there, like I said, I got a little fatigued, was tired, but wanted to do the dive. Should have seen it coming. On the way to the dive, I forgot my wetsuit, had to postpone the dive, drive all the way back from the lake to the house, pick it up, go back. So everything was just kind of, excuse me, I'm sorry. Everything was just kind of falling out of place for me. Robert, as usual, was ready to go. He says, I'll wait. So he was cool and waited, as a good dive buddy should. And we hit the water. About on the way back, we had already timed it pretty good. On the way back, it was a good long dive. It was about 40-something minutes into the dive. We were already returning back to our point of entry, and I started getting cramps on the back part of my calf, and was doing all the stretch techniques that you learn during basic open water, the removing the cramps. I was pulling on my fin back and was relieving the cramp, doing the self rescue training stuff. And but as I was doing all of that, I was, like I said, I was fatigued, cramping, so I was breathing a little heavier than usual. Because the swim out was long, I hadn't really paid attention and consumed a lot of my air. So we were still at about 60 feet of water, I want to say. And I signaled to Rob, hey, I'm a little low on air. So we came up a little bit, came up to about 50 feet, I want to say, if I remember correctly. And we're diving with somebody else. Um, well, I looked at my gauge and it was already at 0, and we're at about 50 feet of water and on a night dive. So I'm trying to flag the the other buddy that was closer to me, and I couldn't get his attention because he was somewhere else. So I immediately saw Robert, who was actually further away from me than the other guy was. So I swam as fast as I could, showed him I'm out of air, and was actually experiencing a cramp when I was doing that. He looks, gave me his alternate air source, and grabbed a hold of me, and I just kind of relaxed and was focusing on my leg as we started to surface. But you just got to remain calm in situations like that, and I think I don't know. I was really concerned whether or not I had actually behaved properly. I was really concerned, so I got out of the water and asked, "Hey, Rob, how did I do?" And he was like, "You didn't panic. You did great." Um, but just the way that we did everything, it was perfect. I was so relaxed. I knew I had air, and Robert was bringing me to the surface, and everything turned out great.
Yeah, that's a classic example of how things could have gone really horrible at any time, but just making sure that if you have your skill sets in place, the things that you're taught in the class they're not just done because Patty or NOWI or SSI or SDI or any of the other agencies just want to throw this in. The skill sets are truly so that you have the ability to rescue yourself. Now, in this particular case, it was a situation. A night dive can always be more stressful, which seems counterintuitive because night dives should be much more relaxed. You go a lot slower because you literally can see nothing else outside of what your light hits. So you're typically going to go much slower because you don't want to. It's kind of like driving. You don't want to overspeed your headlights. Well, the same thing is true when you're diving on a night dive. So exactly as you said, you did not panic, which in a case like that where you potentially can't see everything around you and you're trying to deal with a number of issues. In your case, you had two issues happening at the same time, and that was the low air and the leg cramp. And it's tough enough to try and go through the solutions, possible alternatives, countermeasures in your head, realizing, okay, I have a dive buddy who's over here, and I have one that's above me. Which do I go for? Who can I get their attention? Which is hard enough to do when you have a fully lit environment.
Right.
You have to hope that they can see your flashlight as your dive light as you're waving it at them. But then not only that, but then you're trying to get to that person and developing a cramp in the process. So it's tremendously challenging to go through that. And a lot of people, if they are not solid on their skill sets, are going to potentially experience panic, and that will bring on an even larger set of issues that they have to worry about. Everything from hyperventilating to throwing their mask off or spitting their regulator out of your mouth, which again seems ridiculous, but that's exactly the kind of thing that you would see in someone who panicked. And you were absolutely calm. You gave the proper signal. I was like, where's the other diver?
Where's the other diver?
But of course, you go through that again. If your skills are tight, those thoughts go through really quick, and you just, okay, I gotta respond to what you need. And so the basic problem-solving set, the first thing you do is solve the most pressing issue, which in your case was
the air.
Because if you can breathe, you now have time to reason through the other issues. So once you're able to start breathing off my alternate air source, then we could work the issue of the cramp. So
yeah, while I was poking, actually, you kind of applied one of your rescue maneuvers there. As I was attending to my leg cramp, you were actually controlling my ascent to the surface.
Right.
So I didn't have to worry about that. I just kind of was focusing on my cramp, which if you're going to get a rescue certification, I encourage it
Yeah.
because it gives you that extra step of confidence.
Yeah.
It will build you know, your skill sets. It'll push them over the limit. And so it just works itself out really good to have that certification. If you have your advanced open water certification, that's a really good certification to have. But if you really try to get at least your rescue diver certification, if at all anything, it just brings everything together for you and makes you a more confident diver. If you have any kind of how can I put it, any kind of holdups or any kind of anxieties or anything like that, they will surface during this training and gives you the ability to be able to work with that and become that much more of a better diver. Um, and like I said, I experienced this and didn't panic because then again, of course, I trusted my dive buddy. Um, so we we were clicking. It was perfect. So, but at the same time, it also makes you wary of other divers when you go diving.
Right.
You
Right.
got to make sure that you know who you're diving with, and if you don't know
Sure.
who you're diving with, then you're pretty much on your own. Like we've discussed this
Yep.
before. Then you have to watch your own skills because you never know when you might have to be saving somebody else.
That's true. And that's just one more plug for why you want to make sure your skills are tight.
Right.
Um, the skills that you practice frequently are the ones that are going to be available to you immediately at the time you need them. One of the tenets of the PADI training philosophy is repetition, because that's what builds confidence in the skill.
Why do
And
we gotta do this
exactly, do I gotta
again?
do this
Do I
again?
do it? Do I gotta assemble, disassemble? Yes.
Exactly. So you know that you know that you know. And even after you get certified, I'll be the first one to tell you that does not make you an expert diver. It just means that you have grasped
Basics.
the basic skill sets to make you a safe diver, so that you should be able to handle your situation and hopefully the buddy that you're diving with. But really, you have to make sure that after you get certified, don't just forget about doing the mass clearing exercise every so often, or weight removal on the surface, or any of the skill sets, the remove and replace your gear underwater. All of those are important skills to have, because you never know when you're going to run across a situation where you have to use them.
You know, it's funny, we joke about this a lot, but all of the skill sets that you learn during your basic open water certification, I've have constantly I've had my mask
Yeah.
kicked down all the way down to my neck.
You pick all the good dive buddies, man.
Yeah.
You do.
Then I've had the regular kicked out of my mouth. I've been kicked on the head. Monica
Yep.
kicked me on the
Yep.
head. And kicked me hard enough that I got disoriented.
Now you realize, if she is watching, or if she picks up the podcast later, she's going to be calling you.
Yeah, she probably
Why'd you,
will.
Why'd you tell everybody about that? Now they think I'm a horrible diver.
Then the other one was Juan. He kicked my mask and regulator out of my mouth. So those are the things that you just don't panic.
Right.
We didn't cancel the dive. I didn't surface. It took me a while. I had to stop, reposition my mask, clear it, and just continued on with the dive.
Exactly. Exactly. Now, you mentioned Juan kicking you. One of the things that reminded me. One of the important skill sets to really, really hone after you get your certification is buoyancy control. Uh, as a diver, you obviously don't want to wreck the reefs or whatever it is you're diving on. You want a very clean, smooth dive. And if you are constantly dragging the bottom, or your feet are flipping so hard that you keep scraping or creating a vortex on the bottom of a very silty area, you're leaving this big cloud of silt as you go by. which anyone diving behind you, it just really makes for a horrible dive. So it's important to understand how you control your buoyancy. And when we teach the class, we give you the basics about that. I explain about how you need to put enough air in your regulate or in your BC to get you in that ballpark of where you're staying in a particular depth in the water column. But then the rest of it is getting a sense for your breath control. And that doesn't mean hold your breath or change how deeply you breathe. It's about getting a sense for the rhythm as when you inhale, you displace more water. And so you're going to start to rise. But there's a delay. And for everybody, that's a little bit different. You know, women will typically have a lower lung capacity, so there may be less of a delay when they take a breath between that time and they start to rise. And then when they exhale, and they decrease their displacement, and then they start to descend. For big guys who have monster lungs, you know, they take a deep breath, and then there's this delay, and finally they start to rise. But then catching that rhythm, so you're not going in a seesaw effect. That timing becomes so natural that you just cruise straight. And then it's just realizing, okay, I'm coming up on something that I need to go up over. You make a deeper breath ahead of the obstacle, so you end up rising just over it, and then you exhale to drop below it. So it's important to get those skill sets, you know, that way everybody enjoys a good dive.
There was one time, and I mentioned an individual earlier. I'm not going to re-say his name, but remember when we thought we were chasing a big catfish or something? We didn't know what it was.
Yes.
You know,
it was a big catfish.
It was a big catfish.
Yes.
We're seeing this cloud of silt. Just, you know, sometimes the catfish will scour along the bottom, causing like a little silt to come up from the ground, and Robert thought, you know, he kind of like gave me an indication like big fish, so we started going, and we finally find the fish, and it sure is big. It's actually another diver's fin. He was scraping the bottom of the lake.
Exactly. Which out at a lake like Amistad or San Felipe Creek is not as big a deal because you're just creating a bad dive environment. You're not really damaging much. However, if you're out in the Caribbean, some of these places where you have a real coral reef, you could potentially be damaging the environment. You could be because coral is alive, and so if you're scraping up against that or kicking sand in it, you are potentially damaging a reef, and you want to avoid that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so next topic. I kind of touched on this last week as well. I try to stress with students when I'm teaching a class, it's important to go out and get your gear as quickly as possible. Now, the PADI philosophy of teaching is the 3 E's. You get your education, then you get your equipment, and then you get your experience, and that they feed each other. So that you start, of course, obviously with the education, because without that you've got nothing to start with. Although I have to admit, I did start without the education. I just kind of got handed the gear by somebody, and stupid me just jumped in the water. Fortunately, there was no damage that occurred, and it actually fueled my desire to become a diver. But you get the education, so you know how to actually dive, or you dive in the new environment if you're continuing education. Then you get the equipment that's appropriate for that level of education. And then you go out and dive. You get the experience. Once you get some experience, then you may realize, well, I want to dive deeper. I want to dive at night. I want to dive on wrecks, or whatever it is that you want to expand your dive experience into. Well, then you go back through and you get additional education for that, whether it's night diving or wreck diving. And then there's typically gear that you need to get that goes with that. Night diving, obviously, lights are important. And then you go out and get the experience. It just becomes a never-ending cycle, and you can take that as far as you want to, and as broad an experience and certification levels as you want. But I can't stress enough how important it is to get your own gear. Well, I always share this particular story with my students because it's both funny and gross, and but it makes a very important point about gear.
Which kind of, when you handed me your alternate air source that day when I was having issues, I wasn't sure if I wanted to actually put that in my mouth, breathe off of that thing. But I know how thorough you are, and I know that you had already had your gear serviced,
Right.
which will, bring me to something later on that I'm going to talk about. But right now, I'll let you tell your story now.
Okay, so
Listen, boys and girls.
there I was, knee deep in grenade pins. No, wait a minute, that's a totally different experience.
That's
Okay,
next week's.
yeah, that's right. Um, my wife and I were diving in Florida, in the Keys, and let me tell you, if you've not been to the Keys for diving, it is just awesome. Especially if it makes a great trip if you can't afford to go to exotic climbs like Cozumel or Bonaire or Curacao, someplace like that. So we were in the Keys. We were heading out to dive on the um, Spiegel Grove, which is a monstrous ship that was sunk intentionally as a reef. And the day we went out, I get motion sickness, but I haven't gotten car sick in years. I used to horribly when I was little, but I kind of grew out of that. But I don't do roller coasters. Period. As those of you saw last week's episode, me talking about my my near-death experience as far as nausea was concerned on that dive and why. Um, I don't handle the up and down motion very well. But here we were heading out to, and everything you have to get out to, everything you want to dive on in the Keys is basically you have to get out there to buy a boat. So we're on a pretty good sized boat. It was just the right size for the waves that were going on out there. They're about 3 or 4 foot waves, and so we're going up and then down and up and I was just getting sicker and sicker. And even my wife, who does not get motion sickness and can do the roller coaster things, was getting sicker and sicker. And pretty soon, painting the side of the boat, which was not good. But I'm thinking, okay, I can make it through there. So we finally got to the site, it was about a 25-minute ride out. So we get out there, and now we're stopped. We're moored to the mooring buoy above the ship, and I'm starting to get nauseous again. So I'm like, let me get in the water really quick. So I got cleared, got in the water, grabbed the trailing line. Everybody else got in the water, and then we follow it down. As soon as I got below about 15, 20 feet, I was fine. You don't really feel the up and down motion. You're part of the environment. So that particular sensory input was gone, and I was cool, relaxed, enjoyed a fantastic dive. It was my first dive on a ship of that size, and it was for my wife as well. It was actually her first really serious deep dive. She was still a basic diver at that point. So we had a great dive. We come back up, of course, divers out there, you know that if you do a deep dive, you come up to 15 feet and you hang there for 3 minutes. Okay, that's your safety stop. It's sort of a quasi decompression stop. So, of course, if you are prone to motion sickness, hanging at 15 feet for 3 minutes seems like forever. So I'm sitting there going up and down. Oh, there it comes, and just I'm like I'm trying to hold this back. Finally, after about 45 seconds, I'd read about it. I figured, well, if there's any time I'm going to test it out, it's now. I had no choice. I seriously hurled right through my regulator. Now, I'd read that if you have to, you can do that, and you just push as hard as you can to get it through the regulator, and then you clear it out. Now, fortunately, everyone dives with both a primary regulator and an alternate, which I have my regulator here, so I'll kind of give you an idea of what I'm talking about here. So here's the typical rig that divers dive with right here. This is probably the most important piece of gear that you'll have. And so you have the first stage here, which is what actually connects to the top of the tank, and then it feeds through these hoses to your primary regulator here. And I recommend the Scooper Pro or the Aqualung Legend. It's an awesome regulator.
And so do I.
Yes. And then you, of course, have...
Copycat.
Yes, right. And then, of course, you have your alternate. And notice it's bright yellow for reasons that you divers already know about. So, my other primary regulator, I have a Genesis GS2000, which is an awesome regulator. One of the few that's still made pretty much the same way. It's just that good a regulator. But I ended up having to hurl through it, and I switched to my alternate, so you always have a backup in that situation. But of course, I got the primary service and everything. But literally, I had to hurl, and so it just blew it right out the exhaust ports of the regulator, and it was fine. It worked. I mean, it didn't taste great, but it worked, and it shows you that that if you take care of your gear, it will take care of you quite literally. Now, having said all that, I made the point with my students that the reason why you want to start getting your gear as soon as possible is a lot of people, they don't. They just simply say, I don't want to spend the money, or they don't plan to dive as frequently as, say, you and I do.
Right.
And so they're like, oh, I'll save my money. I'll never make enough to make it worthwhile. Well, the thing is, when you go to places like Cozumel or the Keys or wherever to go diving, and you rent gear, they're supposed to take good care of the equipment. They clean it, rinse it out between dives and things like that. But you never know where it's been. You don't know necessarily that it got a thorough cleaning between the people who use that particular set of gear, especially the regulator, the people that used it just before you. Now, their practice may be to simply take it and just dip it a few times in a dip tank, or they may take it back and you've got your own set that they've rented you, and that's fine. But I would submit that probably a lot of folks who might go through the experience that I had and hurl, they don't want to share that. There may not be very forthcoming. Say, oh man, it was so wild. I threw up on my regulator, so that the dive master or the dive operation goes, okay, we're gonna remove that particular regulator from service while we clean it up. If they don't know, it's hard for them to head it off at the pass. So you never know. You might be grabbing a piece of equipment that has not been treated too kindly.
Right.
So that's why I say start getting your gear as soon as possible. Start off definitely with the regulator setup, because that's if you travel with nothing else. As expensive as it is to travel these days,
right.
They want to charge you for every little thing. You see how small the rig is. You could roll that puppy up and stick it in your carry-on easily, and so you could rent everything else and just bring that with you.
Yeah, when I remember I did two dives with rented equipment, which was I dove, I think, 2 weeks after I got my certification, because I wanted to hurry up and get back into the water.
Right.
Rented didn't have anything, so I rented everything twice. We did two dives.
That's right.
Rented it twice, and then after that, it was kind of pricey. So I said, might as well just make the investment and buy my own gear, because I knew that this is something that I wanted to do, and I didn't want to rely on renting gear. I just wanted to have my own. This way I could dive anytime I wanted to and didn't have to worry about going to the dive shop and renting and all of that stuff. But I went ahead and bought everything up front, and I went with good equipment. I mean, there's different things you can do. There's package deals that you can get that are not as expensive, but it's all pretty much what you want to do and what you can afford. maybe we can talk about that later on. Um, but for the most part, I went ahead and just got the gear that I wanted, and it was pretty much some of the same gear that I trained with. So I was really familiar with it, and just went from there. Um, but I don't think people that go to, they go overseas to dive in these nice places. I don't think that they really have the time to actually treat or take care of their gear.
Oh, absolutely right. Absolutely right. Well, that's true. You're going to be spending a fair amount of money on gear, although it gets cheaper and cheaper every year.
You're right.
You can get some really good package deals for $500. Now, I wouldn't go diving in strenuous conditions, extremely deep, or in colder waters with gear that's that inexpensive. But if all you're going to do is just do a little bit, some light diving,
Yeah.
go into the Caribbean or something like that, you
Just
but here's the thing. Even the cheapest gear has got to keep you alive. It's life support equipment.
right.
So it's got to be in good enough shape by design to work well. And it really comes down to like everything else. If you take care of it, it's going to work for you.
Right.
I didn't spend a huge amount of money on my first gear when I first got my basic certification in the year 2000. I probably spent about $1,500 for all the gear, and I went out and got even all the lights, and I did buy as if I was already had my advanced certification, because I was like, I want it all. But of course, it was more expensive then too. So I spent about $1,500 on my first basic set of gear, and I have almost all of it still, and it's still serviceable, still in good shape. Now you can tell it's weathered. My Genesis regulator, which is still an awesome regulator, it's the face of it has got all sorts of scratches on it and things like that, and it looks sun bleached. And my Genesis Phantom VC is all sun bleached as well. But in fact, in some aspects, is a better BC than the Marius BC.
Because of the pockets.
Well, that's a huge aspect of it.
Well, I still have my gear.
Yeah.
I went with the Aqualung, everything Aqualung. I went with the Pro QD.
Right.
And it's the BC that I still use today. If you look at it, it doesn't look weathered because I'm a neat freak. I tend to take care of my stuff
Exactly.
I think I'm overprotective when it comes to my gear.
You do spend an inordinate amount of time cleaning. You practically dry off every little piece and polish it to a nice shine.
I do. I
dude,
really do.
Little anal retentive, as we call it.
I'll wash it and then I'll wait for it to dry. And if I still see and
I'll pet it and I'll spank it when it's
yeah,
bad.
exactly. I better not treat me wrong either.
That's right.
And I'm OCD when it comes to my
yes, you are.
To my gear. But if you look at it, it still looks like I just took it out of the box, and I've actually had it close to 5 years now. And Rob's laughing, he's making fun of me, but I'm overly protective with it when it comes to my gear, because it's my life support. I want to make sure it takes care of me, so I take care of it.
Right.
So, but yeah, and I went with everything. My first regulator was the Aqualung LX, the Titan LX, which I still have. It's still in perfect condition. I haven't used it in a while, but I know I still need to get it serviced. And then I have, of course, the Aqualung Octopus. I went with the Calypso.
Yeah.
My first one, which is the one that you're currently using.
Yep.
And then went with my favorite wetsuit, my Pinnacle.
You like your Pinnacle, yeah.
My Pinnacles, they're awesome. I got a story though with my 5 mil Pinnacle. I mentioned my friend Monica earlier. She's haven't dealt with her in a while. In fact, we were supposed to do it today. So if she's watching this,
What happened?
I'm sorry, Monica. Water's 50 degrees. It's just too cold.
Wait a minute, you've got a warmer wetsuit.
No, well, remember when I was asking you what the lake temperature was earlier this week?
Yeah.
Well, that's why, because she had approached me if I wanted to do a dive, but you know, she of course just got a whole 8 mil ensemble.
Has she even used it?
No, she wanted to actually try it, but I had, woke up feeling kind of tired, and I had a lot of things to do, so I just didn't get around to it, and then looked out, and it's windy and cold.
Right.
So I kind of figured it wouldn't have made for, in the water, it wouldn't have been so bad, but getting out of the water, running up the rocks with all that gear.
Well, it was pretty much cloudy all day, which makes not for a fun exit.
Right. So didn't want to do it, but the gear will take care of you as long as you take care of it, which kind of brings me to my next topic, which is the next thing on the list, safety equipment, or safety safety
tip segment.
Yeah, there you go. I'm sorry. It slipped my mind. A safety segment. Since it is the off season, most of you guys already, if you haven't already done your taxes, I know most people wait sometimes till the end because you got to pay back. But if you don't and you do get a return, you may want to kind of set a little bit aside if you are a diver and are not currently diving. Take the time and use the off season to get your gear serviced. Always remember, even though you don't use it and it's stored away, like for example I mentioned earlier, I have another primary regulator that I've not used in 2 years or so, but when I send my gear off, I have not sent it this year. I do need to send it, so I will be sending that regulator as well, because you never know when I might need to use it, and I just want to make sure that everything is up to specs. And
now, for those who are interested, where do you normally send your stuff to?
I send it to Austin, Texas. It's a place called Tom's Dive and Swim. He specializes in all kinds of regulators and everything else. I'm actually thinking about sending it to C&J. Having been there
to Waco,
having been there and actually seen his
Colleen,
seen his setup firsthand. I might actually send it over there, but Austin is a lot closer than Colleen, so I've taken my stuff to Tom's Dive and
Now, do you normally send it up there, or you drive it up there?
I'm meticulous, Rob. I drive over there. I hand deliver everything. He's laughing at me. I know he is, but
he rents a special trailer that's cushioned. Put all his gear in the trailer.
You left out climate controlled. Right. You gotta the O-rings, Rob. They dry out. You gotta keep them.
That's right. We don't want any static buildup or anything. It's wild.
Definitely.
Well, we've got, of course, here we are in the throes of winter. That doesn't really feel like winter in Del Rio, which is why I live in Del Rio. I try to avoid that cold, wet, white stuff as much as possible. I like the warm, wet stuff much better. So, but of course, before we know it, the new season is going to be upon us, and we'll be trying to get the dive club going on, a lot of activities. And one of the places that we like to go regularly is Balmorhea State Park up by the Fort Davis Mountains.
Davis.
Awesome place. A lot of the West Texas dive operations like to take their trips up there because the visibility is awesome. I mean, it's just really, really clear. Well, until you get a bunch of new divers in there, because then they tend to, that buoyancy control is right out the old window, and so they kick up a lot of stuff. But it's gorgeous because it's an all natural bottom for the most part. It's a pool that kind of looks like a pond when you get in it. It's spring fed, and temperature is typically 74 degrees year round, so it's a comfortable dive. Lots of kids swim there. Beautiful view, wonderful camping spots. They got cabins and everything. I've got threw a little bit of a video together that I'm gonna pull up here for you guys to take a look at. And now this is the second day we're there after a lot of the newer divers, of which there were a lot that particular time, had kicked up a lot of the silt.
Is that Tom?
Yes, that is. So this is a couple of years ago.
Scuba Steve himself.
That's right. That's right.
It's my friend Dominic.
That's right, in his ninja outfit. Right. It was awesome.
He was like, I want my suit all black.
Exactly.
I want everything black. And I want to do a night dive, but I'm not going to be able to see you.
Here are some of the divers who are going through some training. Ooh, it's having a hard time feeding the signal here. There we go. You see how the fish are so used to people, they think you're going to feed them. And you see, you just wave your hand and they all start collecting around you. In fact, you can snap your fingers underwater. They're like, what? Oh, food! And all gather around you. It's hilarious. You can get literally enveloped in a cloud of fish because they're so used to people.
They were doing a lot of training that particular day. If you look closely at the video, you'll see a white string coming down. That was a dive line to where they were practicing the rapid ascent training.
Exactly. See how used how wild and there you are.
There I
in
am.
Your Pinnacle wetsuit.
My Pinnacle 5 mil suit. It's an awesome suit. I don't work for Pinnacle, but I will push their products
yes,
nonetheless. Get the elastoprene with the merino lining in it.
You know, I was reading in the latest Sport Diver magazine. You know, there. As a matter of fact, the what mention is this? The February issue. What does that say? March. Golly, we're not even. The March episode. The March issue of Sport Diver magazine has a number of the best gear on the different categories: masks, fins, computers, regulators, wetsuits, BCs, everything. And the big thing they've noticed in the last couple of years that suits have gotten much warmer and much drier. So, you know, dry suit diving, while it is truly dry, and wetsuits are called wetsuits for a reason, it looks like that the two realms are starting to get closer together, and wetsuits are, you know, special linings that they talk about are the big thing that everybody's going toward to keep people warmer.
And there's Tara.
Yeah, my lovely wife. Let's see, jump forward here. I like to dive inverted a lot, so a lot of the times that I have the camera, I'll be upside down. Always a fun time. Oh, it stopped. There we go.
Some technical difficulties.
That's right. That's right, Trebek.
We won't even get started with that.
Yeah. Here is one of the actual spring feeds into the Balmorhea Park area. There's these different spots where the spring is literally just bubbling up through the sandy bottom. It's kind of interesting to watch. Now look at Scuba Bob here. This is what I'm talking about with good buoyancy control. He's not moving. He's not sculling. Where you see people that like are moving their hands constantly or their feet, that's called sculling. If you get your buoyancy control down, you don't have to move. It's all just your breathing and having the right amount of air in your BC, and you just kind of float there. And that you spend the least amount of energy and you use the least amount of air. So that's really the ideal way you want to dive. And the camera goes wild.
I remember Tom didn't. They only do it once. I only saw him.
No, he'd been out there several times, not nearly like you and I and our folks go. And there I am. I love my waterproof wetsuit. I just think it looks cool. It was very, very comfortable on my 5 mil. You of course got the 7 mil version of that same wetsuit, and it is awesome.
Yeah, I got it for $200.
Hey,
so
that's a deal. That is a huge deal.
It was.
Waterproof charges a lot. Of course, their big specialty is the dry suits. They are really specialized in cold water diving, but they do really well with their wetsuits even.
When we did the dive in the creek, I mean not the creek, the spring,
Right.
that we discussed last week, since we were only in 10 feet of water,
Right.
or so, surprisingly enough, when I took my suit off, my arms were actually dry. Yeah,
That's crazy.
they were dry. There was no water in my arm. I guess we didn't go deep enough for the water pressure to squeeze it in there, but
Right.
so, and the suit was a little snug.
Well, but it should fit tightly, because the way wetsuit works, for those who don't know, is they're actually porous. They're made with kind of little bubbles in them, so they need to fit very, very close to your body. They can't be loose, because what they do is they trap water. As soon as you get in, you'll feel, initially you probably won't feel, if it's a thicker wetsuit, you won't feel anything initially. But as the water starts to seep into the material, you'll start to feel, ooh, it's getting a little chilly. And what happens is that water fills into the material itself, and your body temperature actually warms it. So it creates a layer of warmth to protect you from the environment. So if you have a loose-fitting suit, then that layer is not actually against your body. So it never warms that water up, and it never creates an actual layer of protection for you.
Right, because it's moving within the suit, so
Right.
it's constantly just, swishing inside of the suit. Even if it's a little bit, you still will feel it.
Exactly.
Maybe not as uncomfortable, but you will feel it.
Exactly. And of course, part of that is also making sure that the way it seals around your wrists, around your neck, around your ankles, is important too, because it could fit everywhere else nice, but if it doesn't seal against the major openings of the suit, then that water's going to move right in through the suit and be navigating its way up and down the suit as you're diving.
Right.
Oh, we got somebody online here talking about Printer 44. Says, I have an old Daycore mask that I've had for years. What are some of today's popular brands, and which would you recommend? Good question. I'm not as particular about the brands. Just about all of them are good. You got some of the name. Daycore has always been a good stable. Scuba Pro, Genesis, Tusa, Matas, they all make Cressy Sub. They all make good stuff. What I always recommend is, first, it's got to give you the kind of visibility you want. The big thing right now are the teardrop, the reverse teardrop shapes, and you saw a little bit of that with on the video with Scuba Bob. It's broad at the top, and then it comes down further on the cheek, so it gives you a better view looking down at the rest of your gear. Yeah, for those who can see, let me get this up to the camera. That's kind of what we're talking about. You see, it's got a deeper lens there. And I don't work for this company, by the way.
No.
But that's a classic example. If you are one of those people who gets freaked out by seeing too much around you, then you want to get one of those framed, very rigidly framed masks that typically are dark, black material, so it kind of creates a blinder situation. Other people who are claustrophobic, that would just absolutely drive them crazy.
Right. I have both. I do have an all black silicone frame mask.
Right.
And also I have the same mask with a clear silicone all the way around it. And one of the things that I noticed right off, the first mask that I got was clear, but for some reason it fogs up on me, and I haven't. And it was an aqualung mask. It was a really good mask,
Yeah.
and I can't solve the fog issue. So I went ahead and got a different mask. It was aqualung also, and it was the Infinity mask, which is a really good mask. Uh, and the first one, the first Infinity I got was all black, but because it restricts light, if you are claustrophobic, I do not recommend that mask.
Yeah. Yeah.
Of course, naturally I'm not, but when I got the same mask with a clear frame around it, it was just more light, and that's the mask that I use more,
Yeah. Yeah.
because it actually does let more light in. But it does have the low teardrop, so that way, whenever I'm looking down, I don't have to tilt my head all the way down. I can kind of just look down, and you have more visual downward.
Yeah.
So that's why they do it. But my suggestion would be try to go to a somewhere so that you can properly fit the mask, because there's
Absolutely.
different sizes of
That
faces.
was my point too. I was going to make. First, make sure it's got the kind of visibility you want.
Right.
But then you got to make sure it fits, because if it doesn't fit, if it doesn't seal well, then you're going to get water in there all the time, and it's just going to frustrate you, and you're not going to be happy with the mask.
Right.
Printer 44 asks, what's the average price today for a quality mask? You can spend as cheaply as $30 for a mask, or you can spend well over $100 for a mask. It all comes down to the features. You know, one of the things that I teach in the classes is that you've got to make sure that the gear is comfortable enough for you that you're going to consistently use it and you're going to use it right. I have gotten very, very good performance out of a $40 mask, and I've gotten horrible performance out of a $90 mask. So you need to try on the mask. That's the personal gear. That's why, again, when we're teaching classes, we talk about you get your personal gear. That's the mask, fins, snorkel, wetsuit. Because fins, those are the things that are going to be directly attached to your body that you need to be comfortable with. So I wouldn't worry as much about the price if you're looking for such things as a mask. If you've got an opportunity, go to a dive shop to actually try stuff on. Put the masks onto your face. You know, one of the ways to test if it seals properly is to just simply, without the strap, you fold the strap
Right.
in front of the
Like
mask.
in front of the mask. Yeah.
And then you just put it up against your face and just inhale through your nose and then hold your breath and see if it stays sealed. If it does, then now you know that at least that the skirt is going to fit you okay. Then it's a matter of just kind of looking around. Do you have the field of view that you want? When you put the strap on, does it feel like it's going to press too hard against your temples, which would make a very uncomfortable dive? Does the strap itself feel comfortable? Sometimes you can replace the straps if they're not a special, unique type of design. But you can spend as little or as much as you want. It really matters. Spend whatever you need to make sure that it's the right mask for you.
Right. If you have the opportunity to go to a dive shop like Rob mentioned earlier and look at the different types of masks they have,
Yeah.
they're going to have a wide variety of masks for you to try on. Try on the one that you feel more comfortable with, and then you may want to start shopping online to see if you can find that same mask other places.
Yeah.
There are other places to shop online that'll give you awesome deals.
Especially in like clearance time. At the end of the season, they're getting ready to roll in the new stuff to brag about for the new season. You can get some awesome deals.
Yeah, the first mask that I bought, the the Infinity that I mentioned earlier, the black one, I bought that one retail at a dive shop, and it cost me about $95.
Yeah.
Then I ended up getting the same mask, but the clear framed one, but I got that one online.
Yeah.
And that one I got, I think it was $45.
Yeah. See?
You know, same mask, exactly the same mask. So shop around, but definitely go to a dive shop and see, you know, try stuff on.
Yeah.
And then see if you can find it. Some stuff you're just not going to be able to find.
That's true.
You know, you're going to have to just bite the bullet and pay the price for it.
Now, another aspect of masks that's important to consider, especially in the last few years is what's the volume of those things. We've actually seen a number of masks come out these last couple of years where they brag about being very low volume. If you happen to be one of those people who just hates the mask clearing exercise because it seems like it takes you forever to clear it, then what you want to look for is a mask that actually has low volume to it. Those are usually closer to the face, which actually can give you a little bit better visibility because the further the mask frame is away from the face, then that decreases your peripheral vision. If it's closer, it gives you two things. It gives you a little bit better visibility through the mask, but it also reduces the amount of air that's in there. So if you get water in your mask, it doesn't take as much of an effort for you to clear by pressing the top of the mask and exhaling through your nose to push that water out of the mask.
Right, and there's the other things too. There's purges at the bottom of the nose piece of the masks,
which I hate.
Yeah, I don't like them either. I tried one. I took it back.
I've got a big nose, and so what happens? Those little buttons for those things poke me.
They poke you?
I don't like it.
No,
not at all. Not at all. So I have to go with a non-purge mask. So
yeah. Well, the problem with me is I don't know. Maybe I think my nose is too big, and I don't know. I kept getting water shooting in, and I thought it was just a defective purge.
Where were you? You sure you had the mask on?
Robert. I don't know what's going on with that, but I tried it, and I was just totally against it to begin with. I think I was, subconsciously looking for a reason not to like the mask.
Right.
Aside from the price, because it was like $30. And I tried it and didn't like it. I believe Tara has that one, and she loves it, right?
She is absolutely a big fan of the purge mask. Yeah. She will not die without a purge mask.
And for those of you that are probably wondering what is a purge mask, it's got a little vent at the bottom piece of the nose on the mask, to where if you start getting water in your mask, all you have to do is blow out with your nose, and you don't have to lift the mask up or anything. It just shoots all the water out, kind of sort of like a
get yourself out of that one. Oh, now you're coming back and come up with an analogy for that one. It's just got a one-way diaphragm on it that pressure from below can't push it up into the mask. You can apply pressure from inside, and it can force stuff through it. So, but for me, I even teach this with the students. If they have a difficult time, even with a purge mask, clearing it with the way you normally clear a purge mask is you hold the top and you tip your head forward. You want the water to collect in the nasal cavity where the purge is, and then when you exhale, it forces the water out. With a non-purge mask, the only way the water is going to escape is through the skirt. So you tip your head back and you exhale, the water pushes through there. Well, but you can use that same method even with a purge mask, and I have had students where after 3 exhales trying to clear a purge mask, they can't clear it, but then they tip their head back as if it were a non-purge mask, and it works every time.
It works, yeah.
So you use the method that works for you, but some people do prefer the purge mask.
Yep.
Well, we are actually a little bit over time, but that's okay. We can fix it in the mix. So we are completing episode number 3 of 2 Guys Who Dive. Oh, we got one last question.
Yeah.
Real quick, what do you do to keep the mask from fogging? And I was going to mention that. I'm glad you brought that up, because Scuba Bob was talking about that. Some people have what I call high-quality spit, and they can spit in their mask, and that creates just basically a film that resists condensation, which is what the fogging up is. It's condensation. When you are breathing underwater, there's typically a temperature differential between the water and the air inside the mask. Now, if you happen to be a person who does not comfortably breathe the whole time through your mouth, which you really should, I've run into a number of divers who they just are not mouth breathers, and they just can't, at least early on, get past the meme of breathing, inhaling and exhaling through the regulator. So they'll inhale through the regulator, and then they'll trickle breath out through their nose, which of course creates a purge situation. But you're now exhaling warm, moist air inside your mask, creating this
causes the
huge
fog.
temperature differential between the inside of your mask and outside. So condensation, because it's moist, condensation's inside the mask. Putting something like spit, if you got the right, uh, if your saliva happens to be the right makeup, can create a nice layer that helps reduce that. Uh, or you can use a number of the products that are out there. There are sprays. Again, most of these have to be applied while the mask is dry, so they do you no good if you've already been diving and the mask is wet. The inside of the mask is wet. I'll do a shameless plug for a product called Sea Gold.
Yep.
I love that stuff. Because I've tried a number of things. I do not have high quality spit. It's
Which
horrible.
I do.
Yeah, he does.
I do. But I don't use it. I try not to use it because I like the seagull. So.
Yeah, it is good stuff. I mean, it's got the consistency of like a thick hair gel. It's clear, it's a clear liquid in a bottle about this size, and you just put just not even the size of a pencil eraser head on each lens, and then just spread that across evenly. You don't want a really thick layer, but just want enough on there, and just after just a few seconds, then swish it around in the water. You don't want to like rub it out. You just swish around in the water till it creates just a smooth layer that you can't really detect that it's there. Uh, I can get 3 dives out of one treatment because I don't typically breathe through my nose, but I get a good 3 dives out of a treatment, which is important when you're teaching a class because you're going to be in and out, up and down, and you're going to have your mask on and off, and so there's a number of things that could introduce fog situations. So that's what I typically do.
Yeah, I use that when, of course, once my mask is already wet and we're on the surface and we're going to go back down, usually what I'll do is I do carry it in my BC so that I could apply it, but I don't. I'll just go ahead and just spit into my mask and rub it and then rinse it out and then put it back on, and usually that works.
Yeah.
Sometimes it doesn't work. Unfortunately, I guess it's...
But of course, this is an opportunity to use one of the skill sets that
Right.
you learn in the basic class.
Right, which I was going to get to. Usually it'll start fogging up around the top part of my mask, so I'll just kind of let in a little bit of water, look down and kind of swish around, and then I'll go ahead and clear it. But once you start doing that, it's going to become, you're going to have to be doing it throughout the rest of the dive.
Yeah.
It's not a big thing for me, but some people, it can really affect their diving. And, like mentioned earlier, you want to make sure that you're comfortable while you're diving, because if you have a bad dive, it can actually stop you from diving entirely.
Absolutely.
And next week I'll mention a story that happened to my original dive buddy that I took the class with. And some of the effects that can happen when you have a bad dive or have bad training or anything else that this just comes out bad. But you ultimately you want to make sure that you have a comfortable dive, because that's the whole purpose of diving.
Just taking a show note here, so we can talk about that.
Definitely.
All right, cool. Yeah,
but
that's good
we
stuff.
appreciate the questions.
Yeah, we sure do.
Definitely
We
keep
sure
coming.
do.
I mean, that's one of the things we like to see is, or actually hear is, any kind of questions out there. I by no means am like the expert diver, but I have, in my short amount of time diving, experienced a lot of the things out there that you would experience as a diver.
Yep, absolutely.
So,
experience is a great teacher, and amongst divers, as is probably true with just about any kind of sport like that, sharing your own experiences and what things have worked for you. Hey, you come up with little tricks of the trade, if you will, to what helps make diving safer, more enjoyable, more attractive to more people.
Right, and maybe we can talk about this next week also, the positioning of your gear once you start diving.
That's a good idea.
Just the way that you wear your equipment, so easy accessibility to certain things that are more important to you, compass, your computer, if you're using a computer, or your analog gauges, just different things that we can talk about to maybe help someone if if you're having issues with things like that.
Yeah.
Because I've actually changed. When I first started diving, I used to wear my gear a certain way,
Mhm.
and over the years, because of different things that we do in the water,
Right.
I've actually changed everything and streamlined everything, and it's much more comfortable for me to dive now. So, but
Yeah.
we'll talk about that more next
Yeah, it's a
week.
good idea. Maybe do a little bit of show and tell and say, well, here's the stuff I use and here's why I use it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we'll
that's a good
have
idea.
to rent a model because by no means am I gonna model this equipment for you, but we'll let Robert. He's got the Superman physique.
No, don't, no, just so wrong. All right. On that,
Freakishly.
we're way late over our typical hour time mark, but
We're
we
having
really
so much fun.
Yeah, we have just more fun than should be allowed by law. So we definitely thank everyone
Thank you.
for stopping by, checking out the podcast. Probably within the next hour, I'll have this up on YouTube for those who are interested in catching it after the fact, or maybe just want to fast forward to certain parts of interest. And as always, you can check us out on. You can visit our web pages or follow us on our tweets. You can check out Super Bob there. He tweets on RS Garza RS Garza 435, and then of course myself at Robert CFP. Or you can look us up on Facebook.
You misspelled that. It should be BIP.
Right, yeah, not. Or also Del Rio Dive Club. Actually, we keep pretty busy there. So by all means, check us out. We'd like to hear from you. Thoughts, ideas for the show, questions you might have after the fact. Love to hear those. And so until then, we'll see you next Saturday night at 8 o'clock Central Time. We're looking forward to it. Y'all have a great rest of the weekend.
So long.